Homogeneity and individuality. In our society, the two notions can be contradictory. Sometimes it may seem that the only way for us to belong is to sacrifice a small piece of ourselves. At some point in our lives, we encounter an identity crisis that leaves us with a choice between standing out and fitting in. Throughout our time at Redmond High School and our transition between adolescence and adulthood, we begin our journey of discovering ourselves, making choices along the way that determine who we will become in the future. We go to school, we interact with our peers, and then we decide. We decide whether we want to adhere to everyone else around us, whether we care about how our peers perceive us, whether we judge ourselves by our own merit or by what we feel society thinks about us. We don't weigh these internal battles lightly. 10% of clinically depressed high school students have attributed the concept of fitting in to their depression. So what goes on in our heads as we make our choices, and what makes us choose the way we do? We interviewed 3 different individuals who each told their own stories of fitting in throughout their adolescent years. They recount their efforts to blend in or to not. Their experiences reveal more about what it means to belong. In a high school setting, this identity crisis is oftentimes amplified. As with most other situations in life, the majority of individuals choose to go with the flow and be washed away in a current of many.
I think I want to fit in just to not upset other people, because if I don't fit in, then that can elicit negative reactions from other people, and that seems pretty natural. So if I don't fit in, then I don't feel as good, I feel judged, and that makes me feel a lot self-conscious and negative about myself.
While some are afraid of what straying from the group might mean for their future and their interactions with others as well as their self-confidence, others simply don't see a way in which they can set themselves apart.
Everyone always us saying oh, find what makes you different, find what makes you stand out. But in all reality, being different in a high school setting is really difficult. So I think high school is all about finding where you belong and where you fit in. And in that way, I feel I'm fine with blending in.
Although fitting in is clearly important and even a paramount necessity to many students who are trying to create social groups and feel accepted, this often comes with a price, the sacrifice of a part of their identity.
My middle school years, I used to do traditional Chinese dancing. It was kind of dorky, but I found a lot of enjoyment in it, and I was good at it, and it was something I really enjoyed doing. But then, I hated having to explain what I did, because it was, at the time it felt too foreign to me, and I was I don't want to be known as that girl who does something so Asian, because at that time it's still associated with something bad. But so my freshman year I quit Chinese traditional dancing and I joined more mainstream types of dance. I would say that Chinese dancing was kind of an integral part of me, and I did give that up.
I think I gave up on some friendships, both online and in real life, because these people weren't, as socially accepted or as cool or popular as other people I was interacting with. But I think fitting in made me sort of change what I valued and who I valued.
The pressure to fit in within the carefully structured, mainstream high school society drives students to give up what makes them unique, including their own culture and the people they enjoy talking to. Yet these are seen as small sacrifices in contrast to what is gained: acceptance. High school can be a turning point when it comes to finding your identity and ascertaining who you are for both yourself and the outside world.
Right now we're very much shaping our identities, and we're trying to find out who we are. We're not yet adults yet, and there's a lot of changes going through our lives, and with such a regimented schedule in high school, it's regimented schedule, regimented social life, it's like you feel pressured to find your group because like nobody wants to be alone in like high school.
In the end, the choice about fitting in all comes down to what it means to every person. Sometimes, fitting in isn't about being a follower, but about having a place in the group and feeling happily accepted.
I view fitting in just more as like a fitting into like a place where you're comfortable with. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be like conforming to someone's like expectations or what society wants you to think like or look like. I think it's just like finding your place a little bit.
Those who choose to fit in find themselves placed in a system of support that allows them to build their own self-confidence over time. However, the other group, the ones that stand out, have already found this confidence on their own and use it to find smaller groups that are solidly based upon a foundation of acceptance.
You can stand out, but at the same time not be in the spotlight, I guess, in a way that people will see you and think you're unique, but at the same time you won't have to like, you're not the focus, you know? And I feel like people kind of look at me like, oh yeah, that's the photographer chick. So I kind of stand out in that sense, but at the same time I feel like I fit in because I have like my group of friends that hasn't changed in forever. I feel like not enough people realize that if you try to change yourself to fit a certain mold, you're not going to be happy in the end. So a lot of people like who try to do that realize that later on.
What makes the difference is that the farther they lean to the side of standing out, the less likely that these students are to give up something that they like for a societal ideal, and the correspondingly increasingly self-confident.
And at the same time, I was always interested in other stuff that were kind of like weird, or what people would think is weird, like anime and like things like that, and video games. Like I play a lot of video games too, but I was never afraid to like admit it and kind of like, because it's just part of me.
Standing out is not about actively trying to be different or to set themselves permanently apart from the group. Standing out to them is just about being themselves and not caring whether others perceive them in a different light, because that's who they are and they won't change for anybody.
People will acknowledge like, oh, that person does something weird sometimes, but it's not like that's going to be their focus for the rest of their day or week. Like, they'll acknowledge it, but then they have their own lives to worry about. So I never really cared about what people thought about me because I knew that it was only temporary.
Once again, it comes back down to self-confidence.
A lot has to do with self-confidence. So some people who just like don't have enough confidence in themselves try to find it in other things and try to find it in like validation with other people.
The truth is, neither fitting in nor standing out in itself is better. This dilemma will follow us far beyond our teenage years, far beyond the halls of any high school. Studies have shown that those who stand out in the workforce often come up with more innovative ideas, but without conforming to the group, these ideas will most likely be dismissed. Years from now, we will continue to face the same identity crisis. Yet throughout high school and the rest of our lives, as we reach that identity crisis during which we decide who we are and will be for the rest of our lives, it is also important to think about what fitting in means to us. Is it a means of finding our own self-confidence as we work on the path towards becoming an independent individual? Is it a comfortable place of belonging, our home within a confusing society? Or is it unnecessary and denigrating to our personal identities? The answer to these questions is different for everyone who asks them, and it's up to us to choose the path that brings us the most fulfilling and satisfying life, the environment that we feel comfortable in. It is our job to find a common ground among ourselves, despite these differences.